This is going to be a really fun video because I am going to be jumping back into my second book. And it has been 3 months since I've even thought about this book. And quite frankly, I don't remember a thing that has happened. I've even spent the last day trying to remember what I had brainstormed and plotted and outlined for this book so I could prepare for this little session. And it turns out I can't remember anything. I tried so hard, and all it is basic, like a little bit of character traits, a little bit of plot, but I don't even really remember what I planned for the story. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie, and I am writing my very first book, and that book is called Project Lily. That is not this book. Project Lily, I just finished draft 3 2 weeks ago. I'm taking a break and letting it sit before I dive into draft 4. And working on my second book is something that I want to do during this break. My plans for book 2, which by the way, it doesn't have a name because I don't really know what it's about yet, but my plans for this book are to just work on brainstorming. I want to go through different options for history of the world, the magic, the characters and their backstories, and also like geopolitical stuff, because that will play a part in this novel. I am going to stick to brainstorming only. I will not be plotting, just because I think this is a really important step that I overlooked with Project Lily. With Project Lily, I worked so hard on developing the story and coming up with a plot that a lot of the characters' backstories and their character traits and their goals and all the little, I don't want to say extraneous, but all the extra stuff that goes into a book besides the plot, I didn't really consider that a lot while I was brainstorming and working on things. And this led to me developing the world kind of on the spot. I had a really hard time with this with the politics in Project Lily. I was coming up with countries and the backstories of each country literally as I was writing draft 1. And because I hadn't planned that, it evolved into draft 2, and I was still trying to figure a lot of this stuff out. Same goes for character arcs and internal character struggles, and also the magic system and just how things are in the world in terms of laws or nature. I'm hoping this time around with book 2, I will do a much better job. My goal is to get all this stuff, or most of it, figured out before I start writing this book. That way, when I sit down to write, I don't have anything truly left to plan. I know things may change from experience, but at least I'll go in with a really solid plan and a really good understanding of how everything fits together, and I won't be brainstorming on the spot. The first thing I am going to do today is review all of my notes for book 2. Like I said, I have no clue what is in them. I don't remember the story. It's very, very vague in my head. I'm gonna go through my brainstorming notes, which are primarily in a journal, and then I will go through the outline and the plot and everything that's in my Excel documents and just re-familiarize myself with my story. That is going to be the most important thing to do before I jump into brainstorming. This will really help me prep because as I'm reviewing, I can see where the holes are in terms of what I need to do for brainstorming, like what is missing and what do I need to think about more before I write. I'm really anxious to go ahead and get started on this because I really am excited about this book. I think it's a really interesting concept that I'm working on, and I'm excited to get back into it and kind of flesh everything out further. So without further ado, I'm going to start reviewing all my notes. Though I was thrilled to start working on book 2 after such a long time, I actually found it quite difficult to do. As I was trying to familiarize myself with the world and the characters, my thoughts kept drifting back to Project Lily. But the longer I worked on book 2, the more I remembered and the more the world came back to life in my head, and it did become easier with time. I was glad I took the time to review my notes instead of jumping back into the work because it helped give my mind a perfect transition between my 2 projects. I'm done with my review, and it was a very good review because I truly did not remember most of what I had put on there. So it was really nice to read through, refresh my memory, and get back into this story. Unfortunately, there were parts of the outline and plot where I truly do not know what I was thinking. I don't know what my statements meant or what the purpose was in the story. So maybe it'll come to me later, I'm not sure, but at least for the purposes of my exercise for this video, it's not really gonna affect it at all. I did make a list of everything that I needed to brainstorm. It looks kind of short, it's like 8 things, but it encompasses a lot. And then I also brainstormed like certain scenes that I would need to really hash out. A good example of this is the inciting incident of my novel. I know sort of what the inciting incident is, but I don't know exactly what prompts it. And so that's something I have to figure out. And there's some other plot/scene things that I'm gonna have to really figure out how it works. What I'm going to do now, I'm gonna kind of break these up because it is kind of a lot and all over the place. There's a lot that goes into brainstorming for a book, so I can't just like get it all done in a day. I decided what I wanna do is focus on the external things first. So I have religion is one of my things I need to brainstorm. The other is politics/players. The other is the magic system. I know in general the type of magic that's gonna be in it, but I don't know how it exists, what the rules are, how people actually use it. So these are some examples of things that are external, right? My character does not make decisions regarding this. My character does not take action regarding this. These are things that are just create the world that my characters live in. I'm gonna dive into these external things first today and possibly tomorrow. And once I get those done, my goal is to move into brainstorming for the more internal things like the characters and their goals and their emotional states. I figure it's good to get the external stuff done first. That way I can really envision the world that my characters live in, and it might make it a little bit easier for me to navigate how they respond to things when there are things for them to respond to. I think this is gonna take me quite a bit of time because there are very different things I have to research and brainstorm. So I'm gonna go ahead and get settled in and spend the rest of the day working on this, and I'll catch back up with you when I'm done with all of my external stuff. It had been a while since I had an intense brainstorming session, so I was a little rusty with that. I kept wanting to solve problems and make decisions and figure out the plot, and that's not really what brainstorming is about, so I had to keep reminding myself to come up with ideas and then stop. Even though I had to cook dinner, I didn't stop brainstorming. I've found that if I do something else while I brainstorm, it helps me come up with more ideas. I don't know if it's because half my brain is occupied or distracted, or if it's helpful just to keep busy, but cooking or cleaning or baking or even going for a walk, a lot of times that's when I come up with my best ideas. I did come up with a few good ideas while I cooked my dinner, and I was able to record those later in the evening when I sat down to brainstorm again. I continued by working on the magic system, which is a bit of an unknown, so dedicating an entire evening to that was very helpful and necessary. I'm done brainstorming all the external stuff, so I went through religion, politics, and players, and the setting. With religion, I already had an idea of where I wanted to go from my last brainstorming session, so this was just brainstorming ideas about what does the religion look like, how do people practice, what do the deities look like, things like that. And then for politics and players, I looked more at the geopolitical landscape, and I just brainstormed possible relationships between leaders and countries, and also any historical context that lead into geopolitics. And for settings, this was really fun because I actually hadn't really considered the settings, so I looked at like what are the colors that I associate with this place, what do people wear, what is the weather like, what are the buildings like, and so I just brainstormed a bunch of ideas on how I think it could look. And then at the end of the night, I brainstormed magic. I spent a lot of time working on magic. This is one of the parts that needs a lot of brainstorming. There's a lot that goes into building a magic system, and I had to think about what kinds of powers are there, who has the powers, what does having the powers do, how do the powers fit into society. So I came up with tons of ideas for that, and I helped narrow down a few things which was good because right now it's mostly ideas. But that's good. That's the point of brainstorming. And one thing I also did last night, which I forgot to mention, was I started building a booktube playlist. I love listening to music while I brainstorm and plot and write. It keeps me really focused, and it also helps keep me kind of in the zone and in the world. And I have been using the same playlist for Project Lily for the entirety of working on that project. And I even have little playlists built out for certain scenes or people, and I will listen to those playlists when I write those scenes. And so I wanted to do the same thing for this book. I didn't want to use the same music because I think this book has a different vibe. And then also it'd just be nice to listen to some different music for once. And so I started putting together some songs for a playlist, and I listened to that while I was brainstorming the magic system. And I kept building on it as I was doing the brainstorming. And how I build my playlists is I just put random songs on there that I think might be the vibe, because honestly, this book is so new. I don't really quite have the vibe of the book yet. It's actually kind of like brainstorming a playlist. I put a bunch of possibilities in there, and then as I get a clearer picture of what my book looks like over the next few months, I might delete some songs from it, I might add more songs to it, and then I come up with a really kind of cohesive playlist that really embodies the book. Today I'm going to be working on the more internal parts of the brainstorming, so I'm going to go more in depth on the major characters. What are their goals? What are their powers, if they have any? And what are they doing throughout this novel? Like, what's their job and what are they trying to accomplish? I have bits and pieces of this from my last brainstorming, but it's not a very clear picture. And so I want to really dive in about what are the possible motivations and things that drive the actions in this novel. I think this is going to take a lot of brainstorming because a lot of times when I think of these things, I also think how the characters interact with each other. And that influences a lot of my decision making in terms of who does what and why they do what they do. Because a lot of times the action is shaped by interactions of the characters. And so it's helpful for me to brainstorm multiple characters at once or within a short time frame, just so I can see how they interact with each other. I'm really excited to dive into this one. I really love thinking about the characters. That's one of my favorite things to do. And so I'm gonna spend most of the afternoon and evening doing this, and I'll catch back up with you when I'm done with all of the character brainstorming. Brainstorming for the characters seemed easy at first because I was focused on the possibilities of their physical description and personalities. But when it came time to brainstorm their motivations and goals, it got a little more difficult. I think it's because when it comes to things like hair color and eye color, there are a lot of options to choose from, and it's not usually something abstract that you have to develop. But with motivations and goals, these things are part of the story. And without a clear story so far, it can be difficult to narrow these down and pinpoint exactly what is driving the character through the entire story. Then combining that with the fact that with multiple characters, there are multiple goals, some of which may intertwine with each other, and it became almost this daunting task. I managed to make my way through it, but it was a little more complicated than I had anticipated. I had a really amazing brainstorming session last night for some of the main characters of my novel. I focused on 3 characters last night, and I came up with a bunch of ideas for their characteristics, like physically, but then also their personality characteristics. And then I did things about their magic, and then their goals and ambitions. I think these are kind of like 4 main areas that help me get to really understand how a character is and how I can build their arc and how they interact with the world through this basic kind of 4 things. And again, these are just ideas, so I do have multiple things in each category. Obviously, I can't choose all of them. That's for a later time. This is just for coming up with the ideas. And then the other thing I did was I brainstormed ideas for other characters in the novel. So do these main characters have siblings? Do they have friends? Are there coworkers in a sort that they interact with? And I felt like it was important to kind of get an idea of who may be in the surrounding so I can write them into the story when the time comes. This really helps get my brain working because when it comes time for the novel, there will be side characters, and if I can get them sorted out or at least thought of right now, then that's less work I have to do later. And then when I start planning later, like plotting and outlining, I'll already have some ideas for who to include in the novel. I will say this character brainstorming is not complete by any means, but it's complete enough for the purpose of this exercise. I think brainstorming these characters is going to take several iterations as I narrow down what I like about the characters, and then I would need to brainstorm further how they fit into the story and how their characteristics fit into the story. One thing I struggled with last night was I like my characters to complement each other. So if it's a romantic relationship, I like them to complement each other well enough. And if it's like a villainous relationship, I like there to be differences in personality, right? You don't want every character to be the same. And so when I'm brainstorming, it's hard to brainstorm characteristics because I'm brainstorming multiple characteristics for one character. And then if I want the next character to complement them, it can't be the same characteristics, but since I have so many for the first character, it could be anything for the second character. And so it's hard to kind of narrow down at this stage what each character is doing. So it makes brainstorming a little more hard because I think it's a very broad character overview. I think what I will need to do next is really sit down and figure out what, pick the characteristics I want and then start brainstorming like further in-depth personality traits and stuff like that when I start planning out the characters later. I will definitely have to revisit this later. It's not an exercise for today, but that is something I'm keeping in mind as I'm brainstorming is this can definitely change in my vision, and even where I'm brainstorming could change simply because of how the characters could interact with each other. The last brainstorming step for today is going to be brainstorming kind of the opening scene of this novel. It's going to be the inciting incident. I have had an idea of the inciting incident. I think I talked about this earlier, where I know kind of what needs to happen in the sense of how the character gets dragged into the situation that they get dragged into. But I don't know exactly how it happens. Like, what are the details? Like, what did the character decide to do or what happened to the character? That I don't know yet. And I cannot start writing and plotting and outlining this book without knowing how it starts. I usually always figure out how it starts first and go from there. And that's definitely what I want to do. So I'm going to brainstorm a bunch of ideas as to how the character can get pulled into their inciting incident. This has actually been puzzling me because it is something that I've thought of for a while, or have been thinking of for a while, is how did this happen? I have been brainstorming this a while and I've been pretty much coming up blank. So today's going to be the day I really sit down and focus on this. It's important to have the beginning of the story. And I may jump into another scene for brainstorming ideas if I have time, but really this inciting incident is the most important to me. And that is what I'm going to get done today. It's time to get working on this inciting incident. I'm excited to kind of plan and brainstorm something for the actual story itself. So I'm going to jump into that and I'll catch back up with you when I'm done. So I dove into trying to figure out this scene. I quickly discovered that my possibilities were lacking and I felt like I was missing something. I decided to do some research. Though I had familiarity with the subject in question, I didn't know everything about it, so I hoped that there were things that I didn't know or that I had overlooked. It turned out there was quite a lot that I didn't know about the subject, and as a result, I was able to get a lot of new ideas for my brainstorm. My mind began racing with all of the possibilities, and I came up with several interesting takes on how to start off my novel. I've got a whole page of brainstorming notes for my inciting incident. This was really productive, and the research I did really helped me a lot. It gave me so many more ideas as to how I could go about this, things that I didn't even consider. That's why my list of brainstorming things is so long. I didn't decide which way I want to go yet for the inciting incident. I think what I want to do is sit on this for a while and really think about how I could do each possibility and which one makes the most sense for the characters and the plot. But I'm really excited about where this is going. this was probably the most productive brainstorming session I've done all week. I think part of that is because I hadn't brainstormed this particular part of my book yet, and the other stuff I have brainstormed before, so I was getting a little more in the weeds. This was very much surface level. Let me see how many ideas I can come up with. And I came up with a lot, but it's amazing, and I'm really happy that I have a path forward for my inciting incident, and maybe over the next few days I'll figure out which option I like the best. Overall though, I did have a good brainstorming session for book 2. I got a lot more work done in terms of ideas and possibilities. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and unfortunately, it's not all gonna happen very soon because this is my second book. I do need to prioritize my first book, but this was a really nice diversion from Project Lily, and I'm glad I got to work on it because I feel like it's been a little too long since I've worked on it. It was hard to get into at first, and then once I was in it, it was really fun and exciting, and now I'm kind of sad that I may have to leave it shortly, but maybe I'll take a break during Project Lily to pick this back up and work on it, just because I think it was 3 months that I took off, in between working on this, and that was probably a little too long just because I forgot a lot of the stuff that was in my head. So that's a good mental note moving forward, is to kind of keep this stuff a little more fresh in my mind. But this was a great exercise. I'm really happy I did it, and we'll see what's next with this project.